the girls of hip hop, Missy Elliott.
So
Little
I
Kim, I don't
too
know.
am the beneficiary of affirmative action, but it does not mean that I was not. Oh, here you go again. I thought we left that potato salad back in the last
For
episode.
Memorial.
What you say? What you talking about, Willis?
Okay.
This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, season 7, episode 7. I'm Reverend Emmett Price.
And I'm Reverend Irene Monroe.
Before we jump into our conversation on celebrating Juneteenth in 2024, let us thank each of our listeners and viewers. This 7th season is the direct result of your support, encouragement, and comments. Thank you for listening to us on the various podcast apps and for watching the actual live recording of the podcast on our YouTube channel. We are grateful for your support, your encouragement, your feedback, your reviews, and your comments. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for sharing the podcast with others. Well, Irene, rather than ranting today, as we usually do a little segment of rants and raves before we get into the real topic, rather than ranting today, I want to personally wish our audience happy Pride and happy Black Music Month.
Amen.
Where are all the black people? I know it's Juneteenth, but they can still come to the comedy show. You don't have to sit in the back anymore, black people. I mean, it's Juneteenth. You come right up front if you like.
On September 22nd, 1862, the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, proclaimed that at the turn of the year, January 1, 1863, all enslaved people will be emancipated, meaning freed. Known as the Emancipation Proclamation, this executive order, or Proclamation 95, was meant to change the legal status of 3.5 million enslaved human beings under the oppressive white supremacist reign of the Confederacy. However, the good old boys in the supposed remote parts of the Confederacy known as Texas chose not to abide until Major General Gordon Granger marched his 2,000 plus federal troops into Galveston, Texas, ordering the adherence of the proclamation, liberating an estimated 250,000 enslaved Texans a year and a half late. Irene, how do we even celebrate Juneteenth without talking about reparations, even if only for the descendants of the 250,000 Texans?
Listen, Emmett, this is how I'm going to start because if I start ranting and raving, I won't make it through the segment here. So I'm going to say this. I want to say this, that this is one of the longest. This is not one. This is the longest Black American history. I'm just say this, the longest Black American holiday. We've been celebrating this holiday since 1866 to the present day, before it was federalized. It becomes federalized in 2021 in response to George Floyd's death or murder or lynching, however you want to see it, of 2020. And we're still hoping for the George Floyd police reform bill to be passed. But before I get into that rant, Emmett, I want to say this, that I give a tsunami of thanks and congratulations to Opal Lee, who is known as the grandmother of
Yes.
Juneteenth. She has her tenacity. I mean, decades long fight to make this a U.S. holiday. I love this woman because she's also still with us, so we can give her roses and our
Yes.
thanks while she's here. She is my Rosa Parks of the Civil Rights Movement. She's my Harriet Tubman of the Underground Railroad. I love this sister, and she was just recently, as a matter of fact, this year, given the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Joe Biden here. So I just wanted to start on that note first. And now I can segue to what I want to talk about here. And that the very interesting time that we get, Juneteenth is, as I said, is it's almost feels like throwing a bone at us to sort of to quell us, because at the point that George Floyd was lynched in 2020, May of 2020, we were teetering on a kind of civil
Yeah.
war here and
Yeah.
stuff. I need to also say this, that what is quite interesting is that although Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation went into effect on January 1st of 1863, it was 2.5 years, before Galveston, Texas, got that information. And there's a sundry of reasons for that. But part of it, while I have to agree that they were in rebel forces, and of course, rebels would not want to tell these enslaved African Americans who's really on an island. It's sort of like being on Martha's Vineyard. You know what I mean? It's an island
Mhm.
unto itself. We also have to say how the North also profited from it, because the whole idea is that in not telling these enslaved blacks that they were free, they were able to get more harvest and more labor from them. So, I mean, I need to say that, while the South withheld the information, the North wasn't too aggressive to get the information down to those folks. And I think that needs to be told.
Yeah, I mean, you're right on the money. Matter of fact, you corrected me because I think in our opening I said 1 year and a half. It was actually
It's two. Yeah.
1863 January to June
Mm-hmm.
1865, which
That's
makes
right.
even the point even more clear. And it's interesting because on the opening we heard New York-based comedian Andrew Schultz offering his reflection from July 2021, entitled "Roasting the Scariest White People on Juneteenth," and this was part of his routine. And it's interesting that he's saying that it's Juneteenth and we can all come from the back of the bus to the front of the bus and have, quote unquote, implied equality, implied inclusivity, implied belonging. And yet in 2024, those are the various things that people are trying to eradicate. And
That's
so,
right.
how do we process the fact that there are still folks from Black Wall Street, right, who are alive, just a handful of them, who have been denied reparations from a situation where we know that white supremacy wiped out a very prominent black thriving situation. So whether it's Opal Lee, whether it's these
Yeah.
elders from Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, I mean, what gives? Is
Yeah.
this just a joke?
No, it's very interesting because we also call this Emancipation Day as well as Freedom Day and Jubilee Day here. And I think one of the things that helps me to celebrate it, like I said, we didn't wait for the federal government to give it to us, because it's always done around a trauma or some tragedy, and it's
Mhm.
always done under the guise of, I'm giving you this out of a sense of goodness, but it really is about a political kind of
Mhm.
maneuvering to, like, if I give you this might quell. I mean, if I tell you we're going to pass the George Floyd police reform bill, this will quell you down for a moment. It's sort of like, I love your term that you use, Emmett, hurry up and wait here. And I think that what we also have to understand too is that when Lincoln had the proclamation, not all slaves, not all enslaved people were free. That has
Mhm.
that pertained to mostly those rebel states, those that wanted to succeed from the United States. And also, he didn't want it to spread out west. But the very interesting thing is that when we look at the Southwest and we go further west, like Oregon and Idaho, it's almost like what happened in the South is that the Confederate actually spread even further, because when we
Further.
look at, yeah, farther, that would be better than appropriate term, farther than further, but farther, and in the terms of that, where we see where white nationalists situate themselves today. We also have to understand too, we hate to talk about this, but I learned this from watching Skip Gates, Finding Your Roots, and Don Cheadle was on it. And it was interesting because he thought, like we all did, that all black people were free in 1865, and he finds out that he was freed in 1866, because he was in Indian territory. And we also, as much as we talk about Indians,
Oh.
Native Americans being our compadres in this endeavor, they also enslaved a good number of us. And since his family was in Indian country, or as they called it back then, uh, they were free when they said you were free. So I mean, we got to understand that it's sort of like today. It sort of pieced itself out. And I need to say this that was really problematic. Mississippi, which we're not surprised, did not remove slavery from its constitution until 1995.
You said 1995.
That's right, Mississippi, the state of
I, I'm
Mississippi.
I'm just
Okay.
repeating it loud for the people in the back. You said 1995. That's like
Well, on their books, on the
yesterday.
books. Yeah, 1990. Yeah. Let no. Listen. I mean, it's like they weren't in. Well, some would say if you're in Mississippi,
Well, and
you
that's why I'm repeating it for the people in the back.
okay. But let me just say, some people, some people would say, some people will say,
Now
I would
you
say
gonna
maybe,
make us you
but
gonna make us lose our 10 listeners
yeah.
from Mississippi. So
Okay, but
stop.
Mississippi officially, let me just say that officially abolished slavery in 1995 from its books. I'm talking about from its books. I'm not saying that it was still implementing um, it was still implementing slavery, but it
Irene.
finally ratified the 14th Amendment in 1995. It is the
I-
last state to abolish it. And it says it officially abolished it. And seriously, and I'm not being facetious here. I wish I could. But Mississippi officially ratified the 13th Amendment of the Constitution in 1995. So I'm saying this, what I'm trying to get at, really, but it's not to ignore this, is that we got to understand that we have to free ourselves. We
Mm,
cannot wait for the state government to federalize it or do it. And that's why I give so much praise to Opal Lee, because, and as Black people, we've been celebrating our freedom in spite of the strictures and
mm.
constrictions constantly put upon us, whether the 13th Amendment or the 14th or 15th Amendment is ratified or not. We said we's free, and we have comport ourselves henceforth and forevermore. Therefore, that's why the riots, the civil rights movement, the stuff that we continue to do in spite of what this country does to suppress our full citizen rights. That's where I'm at.
Mic drop. Auntie Irene Monroe, the Reverend, has spoken. This is the All Rev'd Up podcast. We will be right back.
Which is why it bothers me that white folks just gave us the stereotype of being late. I'd be like, y'all was first with that late shit, fam. I can be 18 minutes late to work if you can be 18 months late with my freedom. That's an even trade-off.
This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and we are not late. We are back talking about Juneteenth and this notion of reparations, which is late. I mean, Irene, how do we process the fact that this holiday clearly was in response to the vicious murder, as you talk about the lynching of George Floyd on May 25th, 2020, and the federal government, in order to appease Black folks and in order to put down the possibility of uprisings, had to
Insurrection.
deliver right now. See, here you go. Here you go. They had the gift, not give, but gift something to quote unquote the blacks. And here
Mhm.
we have Juneteenth.
That's right. That's right. And Emmett, so this is what gets me about it when I look back at what has happened between 2020 and present day. So let me share a little bit of what I think. I see that Juneteenth federal holiday, which is important,
It
but I
is.
find it to be performative, and it's optics. You know that in,
Mhm.
in lieu of getting what we are still waiting for, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, I tell you
Mhm.
what we did get, okay, that we should be somewhat happy that, well, the emancipation of Aunt Jemima from the pancake box, we get that instead of the George Floyd. You're laughing, but she was on
I
that box
am.
for
I
100,
know.
no, She was on that box for 130 years. Okay, so Uncle Ben, his is coming soon. Okay, in 2022. No, this is important. Now look how this works. Okay, now she was on 130 years on it. Uncle Ben is coming. He's
Oh
coming
my
soon.
God.
Okay, and in March of 2020, we got the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. That
Okay.
now mind this. Now Ida B. Wells, who was a journalist and activist and campaigning
Hmm.
against lynching in the 1800s,
Hmm.
we got that now.
Hmm.
And 222 years later. How about that? Okay. Can't get no better when you talk about white people and lateness. Okay. So 18 months, that's nothing compared to the 200 years and more that we're hoping for. Oh, and then yeah, is it Uncle Ben on cream of wheat? Yeah, we gonna get Uncle
That's
Ben off
Rastus.
cream
Rastus.
of wheat. Uh-huh.
Rastus. That's Brother Rastus on the cream of wheat box.
Okay, and oh, that is Rasmus. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And then Miss Butterworth.
Oh
But all I'm saying, we gonna emancipate these people because see
my
what we
goodness.
did get, what we did get, and we're not, and we're trying to wrestle with this is the banning of our books,
Yeah.
um, and with the disinformation
Yeah.
about critical race theory being taught in grade schools. We still uphold the lost cause myth. This is where they venerate,
Yeah.
Confederate soldiers here. So we what we're seeing as they give us these little freedoms, we see a cultural and historical erasure of us. And it's not just DeSantis in Florida. It is the microaggressions of how this takes place and continues to take place, even here in Boston.
So here's how it feels. Here's how it feels because I've been thinking about this. I am gifted the opportunity to reflect about my ancestry and to honor my elders. But the way it goes down is now I'm responsible for planning the corporate or academic or institutional celebration of Juneteenth. So, in my moment of meditative reflection, in my moment of actually trying to connect with my ancestors, my elders, and my own emotions around that, I have to work on the day that I'm supposed to get off. So
Yeah,
where's the
yeah.
gift in this?
Well, this is right. We're supposed to we're supposed to work. I mean, you have to always understand this: the commodification, the commercialization of Black bodies. They will always get that last minute of labor out of us. That is why it took 2.5 years to get it out to Galveston, and it is geographically situated that it could be done. It could be
Mm,
done. And
mm.
that's the stuff that really bothers me here. They could it just infuriates me because my point is if you wanted to get that message to the folks in Galveston, you could have, but it was
Yeah.
more judicious. Let's get some more labor out of these folks,
Well, I
so
mean,
and go ahead, I'm
what's
sorry.
interesting to me is that we can liberate, Mrs. Butterworth, and we can liberate Rastus, and we can liberate, Uncle Ben, but we can't liberate Reverend Irene Monroe, and we can't liberate Reverend Emmett
Mm-mm-mm.
Price. I
No,
mean,
no. No, and that's really tragic on so many levels because even if you don't want to be bought like a Tim
yeah,
Scott or a
yeah,
Clarence Thomas, or
yeah,
you want to be self-loathing,
yeah.
or whatever, you even in your best Afrocentric stance, you are still in many ways constricted in terms of how freely you really can be in this country. It
Hmm.
really trouble, and I think what bothers me is that I'm in one of the most liberal states in the country, particularly being Black and queer, but
Hmm.
yet I'm still got the yoke of white supremacy, whether it is heteropatriarchy or homopatriarchy.
Hmm.
It's still that yoke of white supremacy that shapes and defines, but more importantly distorts our reality. But I need to say this: it does not disrupt nor distort our agency. We've seen that with Opal Lee, Harriet
That's right.
Tubman,
That's right.
Rosa
That's right.
Parks. I mean,
That's
we
right.
could just, we could just go down the list. But it's
Yeah.
always to recognize it. It's just to recognize that it is ever present until we can have the kind of change and reparations and systemic change that we hope for. But I think this is what people feel good about. I think white folks anyway. See, now I'm talking as like I'm talking for white folks, but I think they feel good that they can say the word reparation. I'm of an era where you wouldn't even mention it without it raising up a kind of distancing from the word and needed action. So we're getting lip service, and that's more than we've gotten ever about
Yeah.
any of this.
Well, then I'm going to add some lip service to it, because every time now that I talk about reparations, I'm going to add the word interest to it. Since we're talking about 128 and 100 of these and 100 of those and, 2 years and a half, to get, I want to talk about reparations with interest.
Well, wait a minute. Let's do what King says. He says, we come here to our nation's capital to cash a check.
To check.
Okay, a promissory note. Wait a minute. That's a promissory note to which every American, he says, falls heir to. This is what King said in his 1963 "I Have a Dream" speech.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so I'm always looking for my money, because these folks own a farm. Okay, that they're trying in Upperville, that they're trying to take from them, the family. So, and that was given to them in the 1800s, right after. Actually, I have to say, they were one of the few that got, I wouldn't say 40 acres, but they did get a acre and no mule.
Well, wow, we have exhausted. First of all, my energy, because this topic is really loaded. But we've exhausted the topic. So let me offer this final word. Irene, it all makes sense. It all makes sense why there's an attack on Black bodies, on Black intelligence, on Black excellence, on Black health, on Black wealth. It all makes sense. It all makes sense why the propaganda of Black stereotypes, the welfare queen, nappy-headed hoes, thugs, Sambos, pickaninnies, it all makes sense. It all makes sense why the foolish lies that Black folk only excel at sports, music, dancing, crime, violence, and broken families. It all makes sense. It all makes sense why we are not allowed, or were not allowed, to read, to write, to go to the best schools. It all makes sense. It all makes sense why we are not taken serious as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as college presidents, as corporate leaders. It all makes sense. Here's why it makes sense. General Order Number 3, composed and written by Major General Gordon Granger. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former master and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that of employer and fair labor. The freedmen are advised to remain at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts, and that they will not be supported in idleness, either there or elsewhere. It all makes sense because this country has been corrupt from the very beginning, and it has never favored the interest or bodies or lives of Black people, even when it was supposed to. So, I'm with Sister Opal Lee, Sister Harriet Tubman, Sister Sojourner Truth. We gonna tell the truth and shame the devil, and we are going to be our own liberated selves in our own liberated ways without waiting on liberation from someone else. Ashe.
Ashe.
And amen.
Amen.
All Rev'd Up is brought to you by us, the Revs. Our amazing producers are Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls.
Music for this episode is from Reverend Price's son and musical prodigy, Emmett G. Price IV. All Rev'd Up is distributed by GBH.
Additional thanks to Bob Kempf, Elizabeth O'Brien, May He, Devin Robbins, Meredith Neerman, and Zach Waldman.
If you like what you hear, let us know. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts and follow us at All Rev'd Up Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Feel free to send us a note, a question, or a comment to allrevduppod@gmail.com. We'll be back